craziness continues in the markets. Let's see where the futures are looking. This freaking computer wants to be restarted again. It's amazing. No, 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 don't end the webinar. And this won't go away. Look at this thing. Come on, man. Wow. All right. All right. Hopefully we're still getting somewhere. But this freaking computer, I mean, it's literally like every week it wants to be restarted and updated. And it doesn't even make any sense. Hang on, shaking up my tea. So where are we? Indexes, indexes, indexes. So you can see what's going on here, but look on the short-term picture, it's crazy. Oh, it doesn't really capture it. The 5-minute chart. Nope, that's not going to show it either. But anyway, so we went way down and we came back and we came back and then we came back down again and now we're back up and now we're coming down. And on the whole, we just remain a bit lower than we were at the beginning of the month. April 1st was here. So we're not quite back to where we were April 1st. And in the bigger picture, though, it's kind of sad as we have fallen tremendously and really, well, this is the strong bounce line. 5,400 on the S&P is a strong bounce line. So we've made it back to a strong bounce. But that's exactly why we have that chart that tells you that you have to be careful, because when you see a strong bounce, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Because if that's all we get, you expect to get a strong bounce off a correction. And if you don't get a strong bounce, that indicates that you are still in a weak market and probably going to fall even lower. Even lower means lower than 5,000. And there won't really be much support until we get to, well, 4,200 should be support, but I mean, it's really no big support until you get back down to 4,000, which is another 20% down from here. You don't want to see that. So, if we're going to have any hope at all, then we need to get over this strong bounce line and hold it like it's some kind of support. And that's going back an entire year, right? So for an entire year, we've been over this line, almost. And if we can't find support at this line that we've been over for a year, then that means there's been a major rethinking of where we are. So to that end, I had my lovely assistant, Anya. I think I did. We had Anya run an analysis of where we are now and what's going on. Anya's my go-to for deep research. So, I didn't want that to save that way. I have to fix that. There she is. Isn't she cute? So hang on a second. So I'm gonna get too deep into all this because we got to do the beige book a bit. But she's giving an overview of what's happening, how the market is performing. She's trying to put some context on the whole thing. She's verifying these political statements that are going back and forth to make sure that they're accurate. She's looking at the recent releases like the PMI and the home sales and the mortgage applications, the petroleum status report. She did a table, but it didn't come out that well. She's digging into our China trade status. Negotiation status, likelihood of resolution beyond the rhetoric. Concrete details on the negotiations remain scarce. Besant's comments fueled optimism. There's no official confirmation. Regarding breakthroughs or de-escalation steps or timeline, there's nothing. And you know what's, again, what bothers me the most, and I've been saying this for a couple of weeks, they claimed 2 weeks ago that they had 75 countries had called them. They said 75 countries have called us and wish to negotiate a trade deal. And at the time, everybody's like, oh, I guess this is working. Yeah, let's see what happens. Meanwhile, 0 countries have actually signed a trade deal of any kind. So if negotiations are taking this long, then we're never going to get any. If we take this long and have 0, then it's not very likely we're going to get anything done by the deadline of 3 months from now. Nothing significant. And also, obviously, the most likely scenario is they were full of crap when they said 75 countries came to them, because if you're going to strong arm other countries into making a deal, you should at least pick 1 or 2 countries where you make a deal and say, see, this is a deal we made. You should, out of 75 countries, you should be able to find at least 5 that are willing to put their signatures on a piece of paper and say, we've made a trade deal with America. And I mean, it could be stupid countries like Tobago or something like that. It doesn't matter what country. It's a question of saying we've agreed to lower imports because they've agreed to this and we agreed to that. And now we're at tariffs back, and now we have a free trade agreement with them. And that's a way to just say, see, if you just do these things that we want you to do, we'll play ball with you. That would be great, but they haven't done that. That would be the smart thing to do, because that shows you are willing to negotiate with other countries, and it also gives other countries the impression that you're going to make really nice trade deals with the people who step up to the plate early on. None of that's happened. So the more likely scenario, so either they're terrible political strategists and have no idea what they're doing, or they were lying about the 75 countries approaching them. Much more likely they're lying about 75 countries approaching them, because while this administration may just dictate policy on a whim, there's very, very few countries in the world that are able to do this. Because why? Because it's reckless, and it completely ignores any system of checks and balances of the presidential power. Because usually, if you're going to make a trade deal, you draw up a trade deal and you show it to your Congress and other people who are experts, and you have a long-term, and you have a discussion of it that goes on for weeks at a time, and then you have negotiators set up meetings, and you go back and forth, and so on and so forth. I mean, that's normal. And you know why? It's a long, tedious process, but it's a long, tedious process because you shouldn't make trade changes drastically, because that's what Donald Trump did and wrecked the U.S. economy in days. In a matter of days, he was able to totally derail the U.S. economy, the biggest economy in the world, the strongest economy in the world, and he did it by screwing around with the trade deals without any kind of care or concern about what the repercussions are going to be. And again, this is not Trump bashing. Anybody who was president who did this would be being bashed for what he's doing. The fact that it happens to be Trump doesn't make it Trump bashing. That's just a wacky logic that people are trying to throw at this situation. It's like, oh, if Biden was doing this, it'd be okay. No, it wouldn't. But Biden would never do something like that. Neither would any rational human being who had any idea of how all this stuff works. So so getting back to this, the likelihood of a comprehensive near-term resolution remains uncertain. Analysts divided between prospect of incremental progress, have small targeted tariff relief, and the potential for continued stalemate or even a re-escalation should talks break down. As alluded to by Trump, the substance behind Besant's optimism is not politically validated. All right, this is a great read. If you didn't know anything about what's going on, this will clear it all up. Then the Trump-Powell thing, monetary policy stuff. Recent Fed communications leading up to the state generally maintained a cautious data-dependent stance. Fed statements have acknowledged progress on inflation, but stressed the need for greater confidence that inflation is moving sustainably towards the 2% target. And the Beige book, which is released in an hour, I think, unless it's out now. When does the Beige book come out? Beige book. Beige book, Beige book. March 5th, April 23rd. Nope, not yet. Okay, so another hour. Just checking. Presumably released shortly, likely provided, assuming it depicted moderate. Oh, I see. So she thinks, I only asked her to do her report like, 15, 20 minutes ago. She thinks that the Beige book was already coming out and she just didn't have the data, so she's guessing. And she's saying, assuming it depicted moderate overall growth, labor market signs of gradual easing, but still tight, persistent wage pressures, mixed inflation signals. So she's like making predictions without, without planning to. With services inflation remaining stickier than goods inflation, it would reinforce the Fed's cautious outlook. Such findings would likely support patience and rate cuts. Connecting the dots, the Fed appears to be navigating a complex balancing act, blah, blah, blah. Earnings season, this is good. Earnings season is underway. Early reports and management commentary offer valuable perspectives. Based on companies reporting, the Q1 season is presenting a mixed picture. Overall earnings beat. The overall earnings beat rate has been roughly in line with averages, which means 60 to 70% of the companies are beating. The magnitude of the beats has been less impressive than recent quarters. Similarly, revenue beat rates have been solid but not spectacular. Aggregate earnings growth for the S&P appears modest. Blah, blah, blah. Several key earnings. So she talks about a couple of earnings reports. AT&T. Oh, so common themes in corporate commentary. Wow, this is important stuff. While perhaps not universally cited in the primary headwind, a significant number of companies, particularly in manufacturing and retail, continue to mention the impact of US-China tariffs and input costs and supply chain complexity. Some may highlight strategies to mitigate these impacts, but the persistence of tariffs remains a factor in operational planning. Supply chains, global supply chain pressures have eased from post-pandemic peaks. Companies still report ongoing efforts to improve resilience and manage bottlenecks, sometimes exacerbated by the geopolitical tensions and trade frictions. Optimization, diversification remain key themes. So by the way, so shipping between the US and China at the port of Los Angeles has dropped drastically, right? The problem is if the volume of shipments drops by half, sending half-empty ships means the ship costs the same to send, whether you fill it up or not. So you kind of have to wait for less ships. So either the companies are going to take a hit sending their product on half-empty ships, or if they wait for full ships, then the shipping companies take a hit because less total ships are moving back and forth. And either way, it's going to be a problem for the entire shipping industry. It becomes too expensive to ship certain items. Shipping becomes a larger portion of what is being charged on the to move things around. And that goes for trucking too. It's the same problem. If you're not filling up the trucks, then it costs more per pound to do delivery. The delivery doesn't go down. It still costs X amount to go from point A to point B. It just depends on how many goods you're dividing it by. So commentary on demand is mixed. Software and consumer staples are resilient. Consumer discretionary, industrials are signaling caution. And there's a consumer sensitivity to inflation and higher interest. We'll look at this in the Beige book. Outlooks often appear cautious pending greater clarity. Cost pressures, food and labor remain a common refrain, while input more materials companies emphasizing ongoing, and this is without the tariffs even hitting us yet. So she's talking about the narratives versus the fundamentals. She's got a little chart here for like looking at how everybody's doing. That chart worked. And she's calling this a rhetoric rally. In other words, it's a talk, we're talking up the markets rally. It's not actually, there's no actual teeth to this thing. Let's see, hourly. Hello. So, we know 40,000 is very important. Right? If we can hold 40,000 here, if we can hold 5,400 here, the NASDAQ, what's that? I don't even know what that is, 19,000 up there. The Russell, obviously you want to be at 2,000 on the Russell. And on dailies, though, you look and see everybody, it's a whole world. It's not just us. Everybody's had big sell-offs. But look at DAX is getting close to their all-time high. That's an all-time high, I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Yep. So, the DAX is not that far off their high. The euro is about as bad as we are. And the Nikkei is way off. Not way off. I mean, here, in fact, that's Nikkei 40,000. I don't know if that was an all-time high. No, it wasn't. But, you got Nikkei 40,000 and it's down to 35.5, whereas the Dow was 45,000 here and it's down to 40. So it's also down 5,000. They're both down about 5,000. So they're tracking pretty close. And the Euro stocks were 56 and now they're 50, so down 600. And this one's down more like 750-ish. And the NASDAQ obviously not looking good. And by the way, it's not an arbitrary thing. It's just because these guys are close in number, you can say he's down 5 and he's down 6, and the Nikkei and the Dow are similar numbers. You can't just apply that universally. I can't say, well, the Dow's down 5,000, but the DAX is only down 2,000. That doesn't make any sense. It's only because they are similarly numbered that it makes sense to compare them. So we will see though, and look at the VIX. The VIX is down. Oh, the VIX is below 30. The VIX is 25.50. That's amazing. VIX dropped off very, very sharply. So there's that. That was just Anya's extra post to give us a current situation. I was going to ask her for I was originally going to ask her for an earnings report, but then I said, could you put everything in context so people know what's going on? It's really confusing. I mean, things are just so crazy. And this was my take on it today. I mean, this is what's happening. It's just, you can't go 5 minutes without, the narrative changing. Even today, as we were climbing, Betson walked back what he said about easing, about the tariffs easing up pretty quickly. He said, oh, not quickly. It's exactly what he said, though. It's like they quote him. This is the thing. They're starting to have yesterday he had a closed door meeting at JP Morgan with only top financial people. And first thing in the morning, while the markets were still low, he said, we're going to fix the China thing, blah, blah, blah. And then Trump came out and said something also nice about easing off a little bit and being flexible. And everybody lost their minds and the market went flying up. But it's the same bullshit as the last time they did this. They tell their insiders and their friends what they're going to do, and then they go, it's like basically saying, hey, watch what I do. I'm going to goose some markets, go make some bets. And because you know what, because they got away with it last time, because there's no checks and balances, because you know, the newspapers, what few were left that would even dare to say anything. Some of the newspapers mentioned and said, hey, you know, this congressperson did this and this one did that and these guys did this, all right before Trump's announcement. So it's like they knew, you know, I'm talking about huge bets. So people made huge bullish market bets right before Trump's last announcement, and even his announcement was made on Truth Social, his own thing. So it's free. But that's still not the way the president of the United States should be shifting economic policy. That's not a real policy announcement outlet. And again, it's the same shit he got away with last time, though. He would make announcements on Twitter, and if you were one of his followers, you were rewarded by getting inside information. If you're not one of his followers, you're not going to get it. But yesterday, it wasn't even a matter of his followers. It wasn't on Truth Social. It was in a freaking closed door meeting at JP Morgan, where incredibly wealthy people and financial advisors who are friends of JP Morgan's, like hedge funds and things that they work with, were invited to a special meeting with Bessent where he makes a momentous policy announcement. And they all got the chance to pick up their phones and make calls and tell their traders to start buying and so on and so forth, all before you ever heard about it. You were there yesterday. We were like, what the hell? Why is the market going up like this? We had to go find out what was being said somewhere that was causing the market to go up like that. And it was hours after the meeting. It wasn't 5 minutes later or anything like that. I said so at the time. I said, are you telling me he said something like this and it was not covered? No, it wasn't covered because no news was allowed. I mean, come on. It's, you know, this is why we have laws, so people can't do this. It's great if you're freaking Elon Musk or somebody or you know, Jamie Dimon or whatever, and you're sitting in the room and Donald Trump is giving you special instructions as to how the market's going to go the rest of the day. That's great, especially when the market's going to pop 5% and you can leverage that into, like, you know, $100 billion worth of profits from information. But most people can't do that. And these are and it's the same people who supported Trump and his campaign and so on and so forth. In fact, I forget who it was. It was somebody who's got chicken, like it wasn't Tyson. It was some other chicken producing company, and they were in trouble, and Trump just made their whole fine. He just made $100 million worth of fines go away from, like, you know, because they were doing things in their processing that were finable. They got fined. They carried this thing in. They gave Trump $5 million for his campaign or for his inauguration or whatever they gave it to him for. For some reason, they gave $5 million, and he just goes, okay, that's nice. We'll get rid of that $100 million fine you're supposed to be paying. That's how things are being done now. Now, I'm from Jersey. That's how things are always done in Jersey. But, you know, and that's how things are done in Chicago. But that's not, you know, supposed to be the way things are done. That's how the mob does things. When you're in a mobbed up state, that's how things get done. Now we're in a mobbed up country. I mean, that's just nuts. You can't run a whole country the way we run New Jersey. It's just not a good idea. Even New York cracked down. In fact, it was Rudy Giuliani who cracked down on the mob in New York many years ago. That's before he became mayor of New York. That was what he was known for. He was a mob fighter. He was a DA who fought the mob and cleaned up a lot of this crap in New York, because New York used to be about as bad as New Jersey. And yes, and then New York got cleaned up, but New Jersey was completely nothing gets done without payoffs and bribes in New Jersey. Anyway, so the past, all right, so here I'm just basically comparing. I mean, this is literally an exact copy. It's like they used 1984 as an instruction guide for how to disinform the public, basically. And so that's what I was talking about here. You know, And as this, I mean, see, 1984 is not a big book. I don't know, it's a short book. I remember that. I don't remember how short, but I do remember it's not a very long book. So don't watch the movie. That's not going to give you the real thing. You have to read the book, but read the book because honestly, the book is an instruction guide for what's going on right now and how to turn a country into an authoritarian state. It's horrifying. You just read these, and George Orwell. The reason 1984 is such a great book is because George Orwell was a propaganda person in the army, whatever, I don't know what they call him, but he was a propaganda guy in the army. It was his job to brainwash people and misinform and disinform the enemy population and to make you, and you're not just doing that. It's like you're misinforming and placing propaganda on the enemies, but you're also placing propaganda on yourself, on your own people, because you want them to love everything that's going on and support the war and all that. And he just saw it as just like such a dysfunctional, horrifying mess. And he imagined that as communications grew, this is, he 1984 in like the 50s, and he imagined that as communication, television and such became more obsequious, that it would take over and would become the means for controlling the population. So instead, and now, and there in Big Brother, the concept was they all had these TVs in their houses that were always on. We all have that now. They all had TVs in their houses that were always on. The TV would watch you. You would watch basically propaganda on the TV 24/7. It's like having Fox on all day and all night. I know some of you do, but it's like that anyway. And but Orwell would never have imagined that you would willingly walk around looking at a device all day long that would just feed you information, whether it was true or not. And just especially with like TikTok and things like that. And again, it's not just TikTok, but when you see, I mean, look at Twitter. Look what Twitter has become. Twitter is a right-wing propaganda outlet. That's what it is. And that makes it valuable. It doesn't make it unvaluable. It makes it valuable now. It's moving back up towards what must pay for it, because all the right wingers are like, we want this. This is what we always wanted. We want a completely right-wing outlet. And Trump's Truth Social is coexisting magnificently with Twitter because it's two propaganda tools are better than one. And they're attacking Facebook Messenger and Instagram and TikTok. Anybody who's not right-wing enough is coming under investigation for bias against conservatism. That's what they're calling it now. And what's this thing they're doing now is racial affirmative, non-affirmative action against white people. They're now like calling that discrimination. They're like, if you're in any way disadvantaging white people, then you're discriminating against white people, and that's a hate crime now. So in other words, if you're a school and in any way, shape, or form you say, well, we'd rather have a good mix of other races, and right now we're like, right now our school is 60% white, and we'd like to get it down to maybe 50% white. That's illegal now. That'll get you in big trouble. You can't do anything that will disadvantage a white candidate. And what's this other? Oh, the military. The military is now, and again, gender is the same thing. So I say white. It's not just white though. It's men. White men. Because women are getting screwed now in the military because they are now making a standardized fitness test that applies to men and women. So women will now have to lift the same as men and do the same this as men and do the same that as men, even though there's obviously some fundamental differences. And it's the same fundamental differences that they complain that if trans men compete in women's sports, it wouldn't be fair. right? They say, oh, because there's physical differences between men and women, but in the Army, what they're doing is using those physical differences to drum all the women out of the Army. And they're going to say it's not discrimination, you just can't pass the test. But the test itself is designed by and for men, whereas there are many things that women can do that men can't do, like, for example, crawl under things that are crawl under small spaces, right, or get through things that are small places. Women have much better endurance in a lot of things than men do. There's definitely things where women are, and of course, again, where they're smaller, so they can do things with their hands that men can't do as easily, and assemble small parts and put things together. They can remember people's birthdays and anniversaries. We can pretend that's important for military training. So in other words, if women designed a test, they could make a test that would be just as difficult for men to pass as it is for women to pass the other one. It's just ludicrous. You can't pretend. Forget it. I don't get into it. But anyway, that's what's going on in the world at the moment. So, tariff standoff. The tariff with China cannot be sustained on both sides. This all goes back to what's been said, so I'm not going to go over that. So as of this morning, we were leaping forward. We were touching 5,500 on the S&P, and I don't know what it's at now, but it's not at 5,500. Now we're at 54.33, and that's the future, so they're probably even higher. I think we're below 5,400 on the actual S&P. And this is why Trump changes his mind. They can tell you any excuse other than, but it's this massive drop in his approval rating is why he changes his mind. And then when people said this morning that he caved, that was the noise going around this morning, was that Trump caved in. That's when he went out and reversed and had everybody walk back what was said yesterday. And that caused the rally to pull back this morning, because he didn't want to look weak, because he changed his mind. He can't just sit there and say, well, he goes, well, the people are reacting very badly, so I changed my mind. We're going to reconsider this over a longer period of time. That's the mature thing to say. Didn't say that. He just changes his mind again, so he doesn't look weak. But now he looks like he's a flip-flopper, so he'll change his mind again, so he doesn't look like a flip-flopper. An idiot, it's no way to run a government. Oh, we have the natural gas report tomorrow, but we picked a UNG long. The June 17 calls for $1 for UNG, and it was at 15.70, and now it's at, I bet it went the wrong way. Where are we? Oh, well, that's not UNG. That's natural gas. So natural gas is actually up a little bit. Oh, 15.90. All right, we're making progress. So we're already doing good from this morning. So here we're saying go long at 15.70. Use the $1 call. I'm sorry, use the June 17 calls for $1. So this is only April. You got May and June. And why do I like that? Because June is May and June is swimming pool season. That's when people fill up their pools and heat them up. And we ran the math on this once. There's an incredible amount of pools in America, and they all fill up, and it's an incredible amount of water, and the water has to then be heated, and most of the heating is done by natural gas, and therefore use a tremendous amount of gas at the beginning of swimming pool season when it's still a little bit too cold, and you have to run the heaters constantly, and you're starting off with cold water. You're starting off with like ice, chilly water at like 50 degrees, 60 degrees, and that has to be heated up. We ran all the numbers and did the math once. It's just this tremendous amount of energy that's used just to fill up the pools. So that's the best time of year to play natural gas, especially when it bottoms out. Because usage-wise, this is the worst time for use, because it's kind of getting warm enough where people don't run their heat all the time, and it's not cool, it's not hot enough for air conditioners. So you really run into a rut on natural gas around this time of year. But then the first bump that you have is when it picks up for pool season, and then after pool season, you get into air conditioner season, and that's the next big bump. So in the summer, people start using natural gas again for that. And then there's a lull, and then you're back in the heating season. And I talked about, if we're looking for positions, and today obviously was not a good day to go bargain hunting. We did bargain hunting yesterday. I can show you that right before we do the Beige book. So, we have the watch list. I'll very quickly show you that. So I hope everybody, well, there's a link to it, so I don't, I don't explain it. Oh, come on. Oh, so annoying. All right, I'm going to start this again now. There we go. So here's our watch list. We last did it in February 27th, which is like a lifetime ago. And very simply, these are self-updating charts, which is nice. So all you got to do is look at the watch list and see who got cheaper. And look at these guys, they got much cheaper. Who's a buy? So ANF down low. So it's not like we're missing. That's the thing. You're not missing a rally as long as there are plenty of things on our watch list to buy. And so if you look, there are plenty of things that are cheap, and you can always see this is when we started on the watch list. Here's where it was the last time we did it. So you can see where it stood at the time. 89 bucks for Best Buy, down to 64 bucks. I love Best Buy down here. Here's Barclays is doing well. They had a nice pullback, but now they're back up again. BXMT, I like them. Well, of course I like them. They're on the watch list. Cheesecake Factory started taking off. Calmaine started taking off. CIM is a REIT that I love. CLF is still dead in the water. So, as long as you're looking at the watch list and you say, oh, there's plenty of things that are really low, well, then there's no hurry to buy anything, right? When things get better, you'll start seeing people spike up, but you're not seeing that yet. Here's CRISPR. Here's CVS, which we did pick up already during this time period. Here's Disney, which we picked up already. Here's Dow, which we have. ES we don't have. EVRG really took off, huh? Here's Ford, which is still down in the dumps. So that's it. You just go through the watch list and say, are there things to buy? Yeah, there's tons of things to buy. And if there's this many things to buy, you're not in a hurry to buy anything. Most things are still really, really down in the dumps. Here's Generac, which I just put out a thing for. Gold is pulled back a bit, so that's a good one. Honeywell, IBM, very, very strong. IMAX, very strong. International Paper came down nicely. IVZ, super cheap. Jack in the Box, super cheap. I just put that one out. Nordstrom is pretty cheap. Oh, Jesus Christ. You think they're going bankrupt? That's crazy. KLG came back. KHC is down late. That's interesting. KHC just had, they're down for the day. Their earnings reports were not great. KMB is just coming down. Coca-Cola took off. We bought them. Lebu, I think are we keeping them in? They should be removed from the list. Oh no, we're supposed to be taking that out. I knew it. Levi, we just added again. Lean Forward, I wonder if they're doing anything. Not too good. Lovesac, I think, is a good buy down here. Las Vegas Sands, McDermott, I like them. We just talked about them. MGM is not bad if people are going to go gambling. Middleby, That's a tricky one. MP, I like MP. I like them all because they're on the watch list. They wouldn't be on the watch list if I didn't like them. So let's Nike. Oh my God, poor Nike. But you see, I mean, almost everything is a buy. Everything is lower than it was when we last looked at it in February 27th. So, so then it's a question saying, how strongly do you believe in this particular story? OLN, Paramount is still down in the dumps. We just talked about them in chat. Pfizer ridiculously cheap. P&G is holding on. Rocket Mortgage is a great buy down here. Restoration Hardware, I love them down here. We just added big to them. We just took them long in the long-term portfolio. Here's Rio, here's Skechers, you know, problem obviously with the tariffs. Here's Schlumberger, SoFi, obviously I love them down here. Sony has stayed strong because they're not in America. And people don't buy Sony stuff, a little PlayStation, but I mean, you know, people don't buy Sony like they used to in America. It's a global product. Simon Property Group is the malls. SWK, it's like, holy crap, are they going bankrupt? I mean, this is insane. Synchrony Financial is bouncing back, and that's our stock of the year, although it's very sad performance so far. AT&T is the safety stock, and it's doing very, very well. Target, we love Target down here. My logic on Target, they don't make the stuff, they sell it. So if you're Target, and this goes for any of the retailers, it's Dollar General and people like that too, your job is to stock the store with things people can afford to buy. And if you're smart and you understand your client base and you know your departments and you have a global supply chain like these guys do, then all you're going to do is you're going to get rid of the, you know, you're going to sell off the inventory you have. And when you go to replenish the inventory, you won't rebuy the thing that got 50% more expensive from China. You're going to buy the thing that you never, you know, the thing from Vietnam that the guy, you know, at the trade show. I don't know if you've ever been to one of these kind of trade shows, but when you're at a trade show, I've been to many, many trade shows. When you're at a trade show, you either, if you're the guy with a booth, okay, and at a buy, you know, when you're the buyer show, and all the sellers come up to your booth and they give you their cards and they give you their product things and whatever, and all these buyers reps from Target, they build up this huge database of stuff. If you are a buyer going to a trade show of sellers, like you would be the, you know, let's say you're the small appliance buyer for Target, right? So you go to a small appliance trade show and you go and look at all the booths and everything that you think might be slightly interesting, you just buy it and pick it up. You just pick up a brochure and pick up some business cards, and they're dying to do business with you. But you can't do business with them because you've already got 45 blenders and 25 toasters and this and that, and then the convection ovens and whatever. You know, you've already got all these things on your shelves, and you have reliable suppliers and so on and so forth. So you're not willing to just try anybody. But now you do have in your mind a few alternates you may want to play with. And now that you have this problem coming up where your old suppliers are going to be tariffed, you're going to go and pick up the phone and call some of these people who are dying to do business with you and say, yes, I would like to buy 50,000 of your toasters. I'd like to buy 25,000 blenders, blah, blah, blah. You know, you place some orders for stuff from countries where the things are more affordable. Perhaps the quality isn't going to be quite as good. Perhaps this or that. Maybe it's going to be better. Maybe people are going to discover a new brand because the situation changed. But when you go to Target, you aren't sitting there saying, I have to have a Hamilton 3400 steam blender, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's not how you shop. You say, I'm going to buy a blender. Not everybody. Some people are obsessive compulsive about these things, but most people are just going to Target and they walk down the appliance aisle and they say, oh, blenders, and they look at like 8 blenders and they'll pick one of the 8. That's how shopping works. When you go to buy pants, you go to the place where the pants are and you look at a bunch of pants and you pick the one that you like and it's a decent price and so on and so forth. But it's also, it's relative. It's out of the ones that are there, you will pick one and the buyers will spread out the pricing to accommodate that. So just like you, a buyer puts themselves in your place as a shopper and says, these are the choices I want to be presented with, depending on my price range and so on and so forth. So all this stuff balances out based on the conditions. They may have a bad quarter or two trying to readjust their offerings and trying to match everything up with their clients, but they're not getting killed on this stuff because they've already bought the stuff that's already in inventory hasn't been tariffed. They can still sell it for the regular prices, and people are going to go nuts to buy the stuff that's untariffed when it starts. Then over the course of the time, while they're depleting their inventory of untariffed items, they will then begin replenishing their stock with tariffed items, but in a different mix than they had before in order to avoid the brunt of the tariffs. Right? That's business. That's just economics. That's how capitalism works. The stores are going to buy the items that people will want to buy. And if they can make mistakes. So what you have to bet on then is the management capabilities of the store. And frankly, that's where you say, okay, Target knows what they're doing. I think some of the high-end stores might have problems because, you know, high-end is high-end and people want certain brands. But Target doesn't have that problem. Target doesn't, you know, again, you go to Target to buy pants, not a specific pants. You go to the pants part of Target and you buy pants based on the pants that are there. You don't generally walk out of Target going, oh, they didn't have the pants I want, or they didn't have the shirt I want, or they didn't have the shoes I want. No, when you take your kids to Target to buy sneakers, you walk out with sneakers. You don't, you know, if you wanted a specific sneaker, you go to Foot Locker. But if you go to Target to buy sneakers, you're going to buy sneakers at Target. Whatever they happen to have that fits on your kid's feet and doesn't cost too much. So again, I think people are really overstating their fears as to what's going to happen to the actual retail stores that are selling, especially the big diversified retail stores that cater to a certain clientele. You know, the dollar store, think of the dollar store, right? I mean, we had a dollar store in my town next to my favorite, it was Chinese and sushi. So we'd eat there like 2 or 3 times a week. It was great Chinese and great sushi in the same place. And so when my kids were little, whenever we'd go to the Chinese place, I'd give them $5 each and say, go to the dollar store, have a blast. And they would go to the dollar store and they'd come back with completely random items. I mean, just they would buy what they perceived was like a great thing to buy at the dollar store, and sometimes it was a helium balloon, and sometimes it was a fly swatter, and sometimes it was a fake flower. You know, it's whatever they felt like buying. It was fun. So they had a whole garage sale worth of stuff, both of them, and it was just fun, just run around with $5 in the dollar and then pick out 5 things at the dollar store. So, but the point is, anyway, I'm very familiar with the dollar store. Not as familiar as my kids are, though, because I mostly would send them in. I'd be sitting in the Chinese place and I'd send them next door, and you know, they could go crazy buying stuff and feel like they're big, you know, feel like big shots. But you know, based on what they would bring back, I saw an incredible variety of things at the dollar store, and that was before they had food. Now they got a lot of food. Anyway. So it's whatever though. What was the dollar store's plan to buy stuff? Whatever is like 60 cents, we'll buy it and we'll sell it for $1. It doesn't matter what it is. If you pick up the phone and call the dollar store people and say, I got 1 million blah blah blahs for 60 cents each, and we could our market research shows they'll sell for $1 or $2, and the dollar store's like, okay, great, send them over. Let's fill up the places. That's how it works. They don't care what it is. It's whatever is cheap is going to be at the dollar store. So they're not going to be killed by tariffs because they just don't buy the things that cost too much money. Not only that though, but I mean, if something's only 40 cents and you put a 50% tariff on it, then it's 60 cents. That, by the way, is another way you get around the tariffs very easily, because all you have to do, especially, this is something people don't realize, it's Nike's factory in Vietnam sending you the Nike shoes. It's not somebody else's factory that Nike buys it from. It's their freaking factory with their employees. And if they want their factory to lose money, they don't care. So they can run, they're an international operation. They've got a shoe factory in Vietnam making Nikes, and currently they charge themselves, let's say, $60 for the sneakers that they sell for $200, right? So they take $60 sneakers, ship them over. Now there's going to be a 50% tariff on the sneakers, right? Well, what does Nike do? They reduce the selling price of the sneaker to $40, and now it's back to $60, and they ship it over and sell it for $200. What changed? Nothing really changed. What they're going to do is they're going to make money in America, and they're going to lose money in Vietnam. So what? It's just two buckets of the same company. So these big international companies are able to play all kinds of games to get around the tariffs and move stuff around. Who gets killed? Their competition. Small companies that can't do that kind of stuff are going to get completely crushed. People who are buying from a factory in Vietnam that needs to make its money, it can't just take a loss because it's an independent factory in Vietnam. They're still going to charge $60 for the sneaker, and it's going to get tariffed up to $90. And now that you're going to get killed on this end if you're the people buying the sneakers. Those are the people who are going to lose. It's again, small business, medium-sized business, Russell kind of companies. They get crushed by this sort of things. Fortune 500 companies, the S&P 500 guys, they're not going to get killed by this. And that's why I really like Nike at this price. It's unrealistic to think that Nike is blowing their whole model. Nike has many other problems, by the way, though. Nike is a mess, but not specifically because of the tariffs. So what else do we have? We have Trox, I think is crazy cheap down here. Trivago is a travel site. I don't think I do travel right now. Two Harbors is a REIT. I like them. UHS is not cheap. USB is cheap. That's a great one. Valet, we like them a lot. They're too cheap. VTRS is crazy cheap. Verizon, we already picked up. WBA is dead. They're getting bored. They're done for. Whirlpool, insanity. $78 for Whirlpool is insane. Xerox, another one. Is Xerox bankrupt? Did we miss the memo? Yeti, and poor Yeti, another great company that shit. They went from 39 to 28. From 39 last time we looked at them, down to 28. So tons of stuff on the watch list to buy, which means don't buy. If there's that many things that are selling that cheaply, don't run in and buy them. Something is wrong, obviously. It's like 2008, right? Because everything's so cheap and just whatever. And we had to wait though patiently. And you missed the first part of the rally, so what? But at least there's a rally. Let's make sure there's actually a rally before we start acting like we're missing something. Beige book. Beige book, beige book, beige book. Do I have a Warren? I don't have a Warren. Oh, wait. Here we go. Oh dear. Okay. I'm giving you the prior Beige book, but no need to analyze. The point is to compare and analyze the current one, which I will give you next. Okay, so whoop, jeez, damn it. There we go. It's not very long, is it? I mean, these are the individual banks, but it used to be so much longer. All right, so this is actually already updated, isn't it? Well, okay. You know what? Instead of confusing him with that instruction, because they're going to both fit. Okay. And here is today's. Okay, but now I got to change my instructions. I'm giving you the previous and current beige book. To compare and analyze. Okay, that's the end of the statement then. Okay, there's one. And la la la. Here we go. Okay. Oh, no, and I didn't copy it. Oh, that's so mean. What just happened? Frick. What is going on? Wait. What's that? Nope. Oh, wait. What the frick is that? Nope, this wasn't it. This is something completely different. Okay. Here are the previous and current beige books for your analysis. I cannot believe this. Oh wait, the second one. What if I hit Control V? Ah, see, that one's still there. So I only need the first one. Now I'm going to remember to copy it all so I have it. And now it's going to work, of course. Yep, see. All right. No, you're not. Oh, it is April. No, silly me. I'm thinking I see a one. The beige gets bleaker. The April Beige book confirms that the economy is flatlining with heightened uncertainty and tariff-induced distortions. Oh no, really? Ugh. What's the reaction? It's not so bad. People aren't freaking out. More districts reported contractions or stagnation. Firms are front-loading purchases ahead of tariffs. That distorts things a lot, yeah, because people are ordering up ahead of the tariffs, and that's going to cause a pop in the GDP and everything else, which is very misleading because it's going to immediately go the other way. Labor markets are softening, price pressures are rising. Oh my, this is a stagflation playbook. Outlooks are dark. Oh, look at the cloud with the storm. That's good. Outlooks are darkening across nearly every district. There's a clear shift from February where the Fed characterized the economy as slightly expanding in most regions. Key comparative themes. Beige book. Activity. Nope. Little change negative. 5 modest. All right, positive districts. 5 modest, 3 flat. Oh no, that's terrible. 5 modest, 3 flat, 4 declining. Wow. Consumer spending down further, except vehicles pre-purchase. Obviously, people are running out and getting cars before they get crazy expensive. Manufacturing, 2/3 down, 2/3 flat or down. That's awful. Real estate, home sales up slightly, CRE boosted by multifamily home building. Services, demand deteriorating, especially non-financial. The economy is coasting at stall speed. Consumers' resilience is cracking. Tariff-induced hoarding is masking true weakness. Watch for reversal in retail and manufacturing once the pre-buying wave fades. Labor markets, hiring stalls, layoffs stirring. Employment flat to down in most districts. See, I mean, you went from a slight uptick to flat to down in most districts. Government-funded consumer-facing roles are being cut. Well, we know that. Labor activity still improving, but offset by immigrant curbs. Wages modest, slower growth, and slower growth is more widespread. Strategic signal: the Fed's balanced labor market narrative is about to crack. Employer caution and early layoff signal in government-adjacent sectors are flashing yellow light. And don't forget, the courts are holding Trump off. District level flashpoints. New York moved from flat to contraction. Philadelphia, back-to-back declines in activity. Minneapolis, activity declined, hiring dropped, construction. This is just sad. San Francisco, activity slowed, employment fell, outlook worsened materially. Kansas City, outlook weakened considerably. Dallas, growth slowed, lending moderated, outlooks deteriorated. Richmond, activity now flat to down with tariff-related fears rising. Holy crap. Consensus across districts. Hiring freezes spreading, spending plans postponed. CRE support for multifamily. Widespread concern on tariffs, obviously. Strategic implications. This Beige book confirms stagflation risk is now real and active. The Fed is cornered. It sees inflation rising, but can't cut easily with inflation data still hot. That's an incorrect way to put it, but okay. Liquidity confirmed by labor and leading reports. You know, we're losing liquidity on top of all this. Firms are entering defensive mode, holding cash, freezing capex, slow walking hiring. Recommended strategy shifts. Short-term management. Consider volatility hedges in the VIX. Position for inflation, stickiness. Sickness. Well, we already knew that. Avoid consumer cyclicals in retail. He's not into retail. I think it's oversold, but he doesn't like it. Auto and apparel, post-CRE buying bulge. Watch CRE and financials. Multifamily is propping up CRE, but the outlook is softening. Bank lending showing a credit event. Wow, credit event risk. Liquidity optionality. This is so sad. Raise cash. Be ready to pounce if the Fed pivots sharply or a dislocation presents a value setup. We already did that this weekend. Okay, we just got our birthday present. Now, if we can't hold it though, I don't think there's anything left to really bet on in the market. I mean, I was very close. I was really very close to cutting to going to cash, but I did figure we'd have at least one good bounce in us before it all fell apart. But if this earnings season doesn't get us over that strong bounce line, what are we in for then? What's going to happen in the next few months? Because we have April and May for earnings, right? If those earnings don't get us over, not at, we have to be over the strong bounce line at the end of earnings. So in the next month, we have to be holding that strong bounce line and forming a base there. And if we're not forming a base there, then we're probably going to end up consolidating for a move lower because the tariffs are coming in July. And then what? What is going to save us? There's no amount of Fed easing that's going to offset 40% tariffs. You know, oh, 40% tariffs, but we're dropping rates a half a point. So you can borrow much more money against your 40% tariffs. So your credit card will be 19.5% instead of 20% interest. Is that really going to change the game for you? You know, your auto loan will be 8.5% with a 40% increase in the price of the car versus 9%. That's insane. You know, it's only people who can't do math think this is going to help. And unfortunately, that includes the goddamn administration. Watch exposure to China and export-heavy firms. Yep. This Beige book confirms what the markets are sensing, that we're teetering on the edge of a policy-induced economic whiplash. The Fed's rate pause and QT slowdown with lifelines, not launches. The pictures emerging from the regional data is one of suppressed optimism, rising inflation, input pressure, and deteriorating private sector performance. Strategy must now be flexible, defensive, and vigilant. Woo! Wow. Warren, you are depressing me. And it's very, that's the most depressing Beige book I have read since, I think, 2008. That is just absolutely horrible on all counts. And why can't I see a comment box? Because I didn't refresh. Now I get my comment box. Oh, people. I am really sad. Ooh, that's weird. This gonna work? Oh, all his emojis are making a mess. Well, I hope this comes out. Okay, well, hopefully it's readable enough on the chat room. I don't know why this monitor's not, oh, because it needs to be rebooted for the thingy, for the update. All right, so Bernie says, how do you think Merck will do on earnings this week? I think that they can't do worse than they're indicated. Okay, I don't think they're going to have great earnings, but I think they're priced for such a disaster that they should do okay. And PM earnings just shows the general resilience. So I mean, if you look at Philip Morris, it's a safety stock. It's like Coca-Cola. I mean, people are going to run to that. It doesn't tend to get affected by this sort of thing. And then you've got Merck, which is a different story entirely, as they're priced as if they're on a going out of business sale. But this is 8 times forward earnings, 11, 12 times current earnings. Look, beat. And here, how much of a beat? Not a big beat, but it's beat and a beat. And they keep missing on revenues. That's interesting. So here they beat on earnings and revenues, and these other guys, they didn't beat on the revenues. But it's it's GAAP. I'm sorry, that one's GAAP. That's not revenues. And here's GAAP. But these companies make ungodly amounts of money, and they're not going out of business, and they do have a pipeline. And what is that thing? Oh, that's just telling you they're having their revenue report. So I mean, when you get a chance to buy Merck for about 10 times earnings, how often in your life is that going to happen? You go monthly. Well, obviously the earnings weren't as much back here, but when a company like this dips, dip, recover, dip, recover, dip, recover, long time dip, right? That was COVID, of course. And Merck was not one of the guys that came up with the COVID vaccine, so they didn't really get that pop. But still recover, come back, and now this is just getting silly. Some of it's deserved, but not all of it. Not 10x earnings. They got a pipeline. They have other drugs coming along. And this is, by the way, this is how they always try to scare you out of investing. Can I do this? Oh yeah, you can't do that. Look at these guys. Look at this. So even before times, they were probably a bit overboard here at 70, but they went down to 30. Very devastating drop. They went back to 60. Then they get back to 60s. Then they're up to 130, and now they're back to 60s or 70 or 80 anyway. As much, and goes back to the whole thing that we were talking about today, the manipulation and everything else. It's just there's manipulation on both sides, and there are people who are trying to drive you, the retail traders, out of the market. And they want to do that because they scare you into selling your stock at stupidly low prices so that they can swoop in and buy them at stupidly low prices. There is just as much of a business in scaring you out of stocks as there is a business of getting you into stocks. At different times, the big investment houses will employ people to do either way. If they want to buy Berkshire Hathaway, remember when Steve Jobs was dying and he had cancer, and there was like a million articles that this is the end of Apple, they'll never survive, blah 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 blah. They're dumbest sells in history around that time. because Apple is a company, and I wrote many articles about this back then. I said it over and over again. I said Apple is a company and a culture, and if Steve Jobs built it correctly, it will survive him. That it's not all Steve Jobs driving force, blah blah. Like Elon Musk. Frankly, Tesla would improve if you get rid of Elon Musk. So, there's not many companies that are so dependent. And how do we know this? From the history of companies, from thousands, there's currently, I'd say there's about 7,000 companies on the US markets, right? And the NASDAQ, the NYSE, and so on and so forth, about 7,000 companies. So think about that over 100 years of history. And so tens of thousands of companies that have come and gone over time, and how many collapsed when the founder died. And not just a random CEO, but like a founder dies. How many of them survive that? Most of them. You can't really name 3 companies that imploded and were no more after a founder died, let alone any random CEO who dies. That's not how companies work. You shouldn't, if you're at the point where you're a public company, I mean, hell, the companies I've ran, it's like I was never happy. I would tinker and work on a company until I could leave. Because if I can't leave and go on vacation for a week and come back and it not be on fire, then I don't have a real company. And those are companies with 50 employees, 100, 200 employees, not thousands of employees. When you've got thousands of employees, all they have to do is keep doing their job and the company will keep going. It's nice to have, you need a captain, you need someone with some vision to steer the ship, but out of thousands of employees, you should be able to find somebody who's got some idea of what to do next. And if not, the board of directors goes and finds somebody from the outside. And if that person doesn't work, they get another one. You're not likely to land a death blow just because somebody is a little off track with their projections and so on and so forth, or they have an idea that doesn't pan out. But there is a huge business in having people get on television and having people like Hindenburg or people like that write reports that say this company is doomed, they will never do this. And by the way, there are companies that are doomed, there are companies that have problems, and that's what happens. You have a company like Hindenburg Research, and only because I can't think of any other ones, but there's plenty of them. But you get companies like Hindenburg Research who will write these incredibly negative reports. You have analysts who are on the payroll of a magazine or an outlet like Moody's or something like that, and they will downgrade, but they're downgrading because they're doing a favor for a hedge fund buddy, or they've been paid to do it on the side. It's how the business works. I get offered all the time. I'm always being asked, can you write a negative review on this one? Can you write a positive review on that one? And I don't do it. I mean, it would seem to be illegal, but nobody ever seems to get prosecuted. Tobin Smith got in trouble for writing paid reviews. He would write a review for whatever way you pay him, and he got in trouble for it. But not real trouble, because he still writes. He's still active in the analyst community. Anyway, so it's all bullshit. That's the bottom line. It's all bullshit. It doesn't matter if you're reading, Forbes or Motley Fool or Seeking Alpha. People are getting paid because either they get paid and they push themselves onto the platform, or they're already on the platform and they're popular and people approach them and see if they're bribable. And if they are, the people line up. People line up to get articles written positively positively about their own company. So the companies are coming to you asking for positive write-ups. The bears are coming. The people, the shorts and whatever are coming to you and trying to get you to say negative things about it. And they're also going on CNBC and talking their own book. I like this because of that, or we're getting rid of this in our portfolio, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's all such nonsense. You got to do your own analysis. You got to look at these things objectively and really think about how something works. And but to sit there and look at Merck, you know, and to say, oh, is Merck in trouble? It's like, how could they be? The fact that Merck's stock price, is $80, which is a $200 billion market cap. They make $22 billion a year. Okay, they haven't in past. They were making 9, 7, 13, 14. Terrible year in 23. Who knows what they did? They probably like invested in something. Look at the revenues. 39, 41, 48, 59. Look at these revenues climbing. 60, 64, 64, 69. Constantly rising revenues. Sometimes profits go in and out, but that's probably because they just made some investments in the future. Because look here, in this year, they said, hey, let's take our $14 billion and spend it on growth. And what happens? They go from 60 to 70 in a few years. Well, that worked. And now instead of making $15 billion, they made nothing this year, but then it jumps to 17 and 22 and 24. So their plan worked perfectly. They invested money, and now they're making much more money every year. That's kind of what you're supposed to do with money. And how much money? They've got $23 billion in debt right now. They had 15 billion, they had 23, 25, 17, 27, 23. So their debt's under control. It goes up and down. Here's cash flow. Free cash flow. Billions and billions of dollars of free cash flow. So, you know, when you're looking at a big pharma like this, but it doesn't matter what kind of company it is, but you're looking at, you know, this big pharma, they got a pipeline. They've got drugs that are in an approval process. They've got drugs that are coming off a patent. But that's always the case. That's how it works. Patents expire. Therefore, your drug goes off patent. If your drug goes off patent, then the generics start making it for you. But then you can reformulate or come up with something else. You know, like they're currently reformulating. So the injectable GLPs, the injectable weight loss stuff, has been dominant for the last few years. But now those things are coming off patent. And what do the drug companies do? They say, well, fine. Other people are going to make the injectables, but now we're going to sell an oral kind. So now for 7 years, we're going to have an exclusive on the oral kind with patents. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, what? That's exactly, they planned it that way. They release it as an injectable because you got to build, you have to show you have a working thingy and you have to build market share, but now you're chewing into your 7-year cycle, just getting the word out and pushing the drugs on the street. Just like pushers, right? Just like any pusher, you're pushing your drugs on the street, then people start wanting it and they say, hey man, you got this, you got that, can I get some? And but then once it goes, but by the time you've really got a big demand, now it starts to be, your patent cycle starts running out, and that means you got to do something else. If you really want to push the same drug, though, you purposely make an unpleasant way to take it at the beginning, which is injections into your belly, and expensive injections into your belly. But now that it's something everybody wants, you come out with a less expensive pill form, and it's going to get massive orders in the first 7 years. And you're going to make so much money, you don't really give a shit when it goes off patent. And by the way, things about patent, that doesn't mean you lose all your money. It's another thing that people do. They always talk about how, oh, this is going off patent, that's going off patent, as if suddenly you're going to go to zero in your revenues. But that's not the case at all. You know, people still buy Viagra, even though Viagra has been off patent for a huge, a decade now. It's been off patent. People still buy Viagra, still a huge seller, because people stick with things. They don't necessarily get out of it just because there's a cheaper alternative or whatever. People are always going to think it's not as good, it's not this, it's not that. you know, and of course the Viagra people, which is I think Pfizer, can reformulate it also and come up with different ways for it to work. So it's very easy in any company to sit there and try to say this is what's bad about it and this isn't going to do it. In fact, that's why we do that good, bad, and ugly report, because it's very important to look at what's good and what's not good about a company and think about the balance yourself, not what somebody, some analyst tries to get you to focus on so that they can make their point. And look, one of the reasons this is one of the reasons I stopped working with Seeking Alpha is because this is insane. It's by design, but there's, oh, for God's sakes. Yes, continue with Philip. Wait. Okay, so here, Merck. So here's Merck. Here's I buy, strong buy, hold, strong buy, hold, sell. Is there any, you know, you could say maybe it's predominantly buy, but, and this guy was right, by the way. So in February, he said, don't fight the tape. How low can it go? I'm sure he's still got a number at some point, though. This one's saying hold. This guy says hold at 20, whatever it was then. It just keeps going lower and lower. But the thing is, when you look at this stuff, you have to evaluate, does this guy know what he's talking about? Does he have any idea? Does this guy know what he's talking about? Because this guy got 106 comments for his article. You know, this guy only got 4 comments for his article. Who's the author? What does the author know? Are they making any sense? You know, and again, who's paying them? Because believe me, Seeking Alpha doesn't pay. Another reason, there wasn't a hole in my life to get off of Seeking Alpha. I'm still one of the top authors, you know, from a following standpoint of ever on all time of Seeking Alpha. But I haven't written for them for years because I don't want to be one of these people. It's embarrassing. This is embarrassing to sit there and you write an article and you just get thrown in with whatever shit. Oh, sure, you want to say it's a buy? Sure. Oh, in fact, you know, they tell you something. Everybody's a bull. We don't want a bullish article. If you want to write a bearish article, go ahead. I'm like, what on earth does that mean? What does that mean that you're telling me that you want a bearish article from me on something I'm bullish on? We're not interested in your bullish article, but if you have a bearish article, we'd be very happy to look at it. What does that mean? Does that actually work? Are there actually authors who say, oh, okay, sure, I'll do a bearish article instead? Can you imagine? But, you know, this is not the way it should be. But it's unaccountable analysis. You know, I don't want to pick on anybody. I feel bad. As I said, I'm a writer on Seeking Alpha. I still am technically a writer here. But here's Oscar Gourdet. He's got 149 followers. I have 60,000 or something like that. He's got 149 followers. Here's his opinion on Merck. He's got some links. That's good. Doesn't have. I doubt he has any reference. There's no like things. And oh, by the way, if I'm not allowed to submit anything that has AI. So it's like if I want to put out articles that have incredible amounts of research and all the references and a link to every single fact that's taken there, they don't want that. They don't want that. If I use AI in the article, then it's not allowed. And again, oh look, you can play the article. How nice, 9 minutes. But the point is, wait, I'm sorry, I'm gonna look to find out who this guy is. I'm Oscar, Chief Investment at Mortius Investments, a value-focused hedge fund. So in other words, here's a guy talking his book from a hedge fund. We have no stock option or similar derivative position in the company mentioned. Past performance is no guarantee, of course. blah, blah. So, okay, so great. So let's see if we can link to this guy. So he's got, I guess it's 7. He's only written 7 articles. So he's only written 7 articles. He's got 26 total comments, or he's made 26 comments. Maybe he's made 26 comments. He's got 149 followers, and 10 people gave him likes. So, and you know, it's like when you're reading these articles, are you checking that first before you start reading, and before you invest all this time like looking at what this guy's saying? Does he have any idea what he's saying? And again, I'm not picking on this guy. He could be the greatest researcher in the world. I don't know. I don't know who he is. I'm just saying though, this is what happens because you go to do your research and it's the same. It's and don't think it's not different when you read Forbes or you read Fortune or you read you know, Motley Fool or whatever it's all. Well, forget Motley Fool. Motley Fool does allow AI. I think that I think the whole thing is written by AI. You know, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, they all everyone's got an agenda. Everyone's got a point of view. Everyone's got an agenda. You don't know who's getting paid by people or what's going on. I mean, you just take these things with a grain of salt. You know, what you gotta go and get the information. And then, you know, I spend a huge amount of money on subscriptions to all sorts of services that get me raw data. Because if you don't have the raw data, I don't know what you're doing. You know, like this thing is $50 a month. Where are they? That. What do they call it? Stockopedia. Stockopedia is like $50 a month. Investment reports, Moody's, and things like that. You know, you've got to get the information directly about the company. And by the way, Stockopedia used to be extremely accurate. They're not anymore. Morningstar is another good one for getting information. You've got to get good, accurate information. Because if you don't start with that, there's no point. And of course, you go directly to the website and pull up the stuff. And Seeking Alpha actually does have a lot of that. That's one thing I say about them. They tend to, I would think, have, oh, here you go, SEC filings. So they do have the SEC filings and the earnings reports and such, and that's super useful. Earnings preview, what to expect. But again, who writes this? Who writes this and what do they know? They don't even have an author for this stuff. This is just their staff things. Oh, here you go, Alexander. So, essay editor, Akin Kasui, so this girl. And here's the stuff she writes about. So, is she a pharma specialist? No, it seems like she writes about Boeing and the economic calendar and ETF flows and biopharma here. So 2 biopharmas. That's it. Why is it so few things? I don't get that. So in other words, you know, is she a biopharma specialist? What did she go to school for? Who, you know, what's her biography? How long she been there? What's her degree in? We're not getting much information here, right? And that doesn't make any sense. Because you know, essentially she's being a writer. She's writing, she's giving an opinion, she's summarizing information. You know, out of all the information, she decided this was what's important. And not only that, though, what to expect. She's telling you what to expect about earnings. In the last 2 years, Merck has beaten EPS 88% of the time, revenue and revenue estimates 100% of the time. Now we just looked at where the gap, generally accepted accounting principles, the GAAP EPS is not beaten 88% of the time. Meanwhile, analysts have turned bearish, having downgraded EPS estimates 5 times and revenue estimates 6 times in the last 3 months. Merck shares have declined 20%. So let's see now let's dig into that if we can. Hopefully she has a link. No, that's not, oh, here you go. Nope. What the hell is this? Jesus Christ. Ugh. This is why you pay for stuff, because there should be. Oh no, it's not this. Sorry, it's the paid version of FinViz is going to show me it, I think. Yeah, here you go. So you have to pay for FinViz too to get the better information. So yeah, here's what she's talking about, although, you know, she linked to something, didn't illustrate it at all. So what are your downgrades? When someone says to you, oh yeah, I followed a link. When someone says to you that EPS estimates, all right, analysts have turned bearish, having downgraded EPS estimates 5 times. That sounds pretty freaking dire, right? But what's the reality? Here's your downgrades. I see 4, not 5, but who knows what she's looking at. But what are the downgrades? From 130 to 105, from 120 to 100, from 128 to 100. What's Merck at? 80. This is 100. You don't just go by the fact that the analyst says, and what are they downgraded to? Hold. When were they downgraded? February 18th, February 10th, January 8th, December 20th. That all matters. When were they downgraded? After these earnings, basically. So around these earnings, they were downgraded, and they fell from 100 to, but the earnings were, they were at 130, geez. So the earnings were at 130. They dropped it to 100 after seeing these earnings and said, oh, you know what? Well, there's one of those situations, right? They beat on the EPS, but the GAAP EPS was down 5%. So that's not a clean beat to me when you do that. So you have to dig into it and see what the real story is. So yeah, on February 18th, after earnings, this guy said, hold Merck. It was buy. He said, hold it here, too cheap. TD Cowen said, hold Merck, not sell Merck, hold Merck, should be $100. That's also after earnings. Before earnings, Truist said, we think it's worth $110. You should hold on to it. December 20th, BMO said, we think it'll perform with the market, and we're dropping our estimate to 105, basically. We think it'll hold up with the market. Who's the last guy that liked him? HSBC. He had 130 in December. Bank of America said buy at 120. They said buy to 121. Basically, people kind of agree that they're worth about $100, and $100 is going to be about 10 times earnings. That seems pretty freaking reasonable to me. Don't forget that 10 times earnings would be 25% higher than 8. 25% higher than 80, well, obviously is 100. That's where we are. So if they come in at 10 times earnings, they should be at $100. It seems drastic, but that's because you can't see the rest of the chart. This is 80 and this is 100. That's 25% higher. So this statement is wildly misleading. And by the way, this is all the crap I have to do because I can't trust anybody and I have to constantly look all this shit up myself. It's so annoying because I can't find people who report accurately. It's horrifying, man. Thank God. And I'm telling you, thank God for the bots, because I tell them this stuff. I layer these instructions into the bots and say, watch out for this and watch out for that and be careful of this and make sure you check that. Which is great because it saves me so much time. I used to spend hours and hours and hours just looking at one company. And now I can, probably about 15, 20 minutes of talking to one of my bots and I can get a whole report done. And I still have to check on them, but at least I can take a quick glance and say, oh yeah, I see it. Like when they say to me, well, they've gotten a lot of downgrades, but the downgrades are still way above where they are now. And I take a look and I go, oh yeah, you're right, great. Thank you. That's exactly the kind of stuff I want to know. So yeah, that's FinViz, by the way, finviz.com, but it's elite FinViz. I don't know what that costs, but it costs money. I find that very useful because look, I mean, for FinViz, you get your nice chart here. You can quickly just go weekly and hourly and whatever and get your views. They got the earnings reports embedded in the chart on the daily view. You've got all your, well, you know, basic company information. These I like. Look, EPS. Look at EPS. You know, again, they did something here, and I would ask. I would, you know, if I had the bot up, I would ask them what, yeah, like what happened to them to the earnings in 23. Sure, they did something. Bought a company, did whatever. So steady EPS growth, very steady sales growth, no change in the share counts or anything like that. And here are the analysts. Everybody thinks they're worth $100. Nobody is saying they're not worth $100. Not one analyst says that. And they're at $80. And $80 is 8 times their earnings. And their earnings are what they are. And we will find out on April 24th. We will find out what their earnings are and what their guidance is. And if their guidance doesn't change and their earnings outlook doesn't change, then what the hell are they doing at $80? Aren't you glad you asked? That's what I think about Merck. All right, Cody says, still trying to understand the balance chart better. Basically, you are saying do not go all in. I'm not saying do go all in for any reason whatsoever. Let's be clear about that. Until we get above the strong bounce line for 2 full trading sessions, after the session that you get above the bounce line, after that session, then 2 full sessions. So after you close above the bounce line, obviously, if you don't close above it, it doesn't count. So after you close above the bounce line, there have to be 2 consecutive sessions at which at no point during that session do you go below, and then you can consider it a short-term consolidation that will hopefully lead to support. That certainly doesn't mean go all in. It means then you can take some nibbles like we just did and pick a couple of stocks and see if they hold up. If it fails, then you say, okay, I better look at those again and get more bearish. Why have the strong bounce line? Why above the strong bounce line, not the weak bounce line? That's why we call it a weak bounce line, because it's weak. It doesn't count. It's nothing. It's a minor gyration. The strong bounce line is a 40% retrace of the drop. At least that's something. You're almost, if you're above the strong bounce line, right? If the weak bounce line is a 20% bump, all right, if you take even a deflated basketball, like a squishy basketball, and you drop it, it's still going to drop. It's still going to bounce back 20% of the distance that it was at, right? But that's a dead ball. It's not a ball you can play with. That's a dead ball. If the ball bounces halfway back, at least you have something. You could almost work with that if you had to. But a 20% bounce is not usable. You can't dribble it. You can't do anything with it. You can't play with it. It's useless. So think of it that way. That's a non-working ball. By definition, if you're above the 40% line, then you must be at about 50%, right? There's not much room between it. So if you're coming back 50%, that's something that's almost halfway back. That means it's sort of almost 50-50 that you could go up or down. And what you're doing is you're making a bet that you're going to go up, and you're making a stop at a very tight position under that 50% line. You're not going to lose much because you're only going to go from 50% to 40%, and then you're going to go, oops, we're out. That didn't work. Can you do a trade setup for Whirlpool in our $700 a month portfolio or XYZ? I can tell you no for Whirlpool because it's too expensive. It's $70 stock. It's not appropriate for that portfolio. As to XYZ, remind me in chat and I'll take a look. All right. That's one more thing. Let's just hit on that. So speaking of picking stocks, did a top trade alert yesterday. And yeah, somebody was interviewing me yesterday or Monday or whatever, and they were saying, you know, what do you like, this and that. And while I was talking, AGNC had earnings that day, and I said, oh, take a look at how AGNC did. And they did great. Here they are. I mean, see, I can't. It's not live. AGNC. All right, so 8.27 earnings surprise. Gap was not friendly to them, all right, but I'm not worried about that. It's you know, it's very complicated with properties and stuff, so don't worry about that. And the revenue was up, so revenue was in line, basically up 1%. Earnings were nicely up, so they're in good shape. They didn't announce they're changing their dividend or anything else, which is very important because their dividend is $1.44, which works out to 16.7% of the stock price, and that's after it's popped a lot since we looked at it. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So anyway, so AG&C paid, at the time they were paying 17.6, and why is the dividend down? Not, it's still $1.44. It's just the stock got more expensive, so that's what changed. So when we were looking at it, it was 17.6% dividend. The book value of the stock, if you strip it down and pay off all the debts and liquidate all the properties, the book value is $8.25. It's trading at $8.25. Unless you think the property market is completely collapsing, then they don't have properties, they have mortgages. That's why. And the mortgage, it's a mortgage REIT. So in other words, they're funding the properties, but they're not owning the properties. And so you're really valuing, you know, the stability of your customer base that you've loaned the money out to. But we like them a lot. Earnings were 10% up, declining rates, and the Fed will eventually lower rates, not as fast as Trump wants, but they're still on a path to lowering rates. Nobody's ever said not. And if that's the case, that's good for a mortgage REIT to have that happen. So here we're saying, since they pay such a fat dividend, we're saying buy 3,000 shares of AGNC, sell $38 calls, which is conservative. I think they should be a lot higher than this, but why take a chance? I don't have to take a chance. So we're gonna spend $8.25 for the actual stock. We're gonna collect 85 cents back, which knocks our net down to $7 and $7.60. And on a quarterly payout, that's more than the dividend. Actually, their dividends, I think, pay monthly. I'm pretty sure they paid monthly 12 cents a month. So you're not going to get called away to cover the dividend. That's good. And if you do, you don't care because you're going to make 85 cents. That's fine. And then sell some puts. So what I'm saying here is I'm going to buy this batch, and I'm going to spend net $5.60 per share. Crazy as that seems, 825 minus 85 minus 180 is $5.60 per share is all I'm paying, but I'm promising to buy double down at 8 if we're below 8, and that would be $13.60 or $6.80. Did I get to that somewhere? If AGNC is below, blah, 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 we collect blah, 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 5. Why does that say 554? Oh, I counted for the dividends, that's right. So in other words, without the dividends, if you get assigned, then I would have 6,000 shares at 680, still way below the 825 current price. But if I'm collecting my dividends, that's going to drop my net, even if I'm assigned to 554. And you know what? If I go from 825 to 554 in one cycle, in other words, in 2 years from now, if I end up with 6,000 shares at 554, what do? I'm just going to sell puts again, and I'm going to sell calls again, and I'm going to drop my net another $2 or $3, another 40, 50% off my net. And then my net will be, then I could end up with 12,000 shares. But there'll be let's say 350. Okay, just for argument's sake, let's say it's 350. So if I have 12,000 shares at 350, and then 2 years later, I run that cycle again and I knock another $2 off, and now I could have 24,000 shares, but it'll be at $1.50. And you know what happens? 2 years after that, I can have 48,000 shares, but my net cost would be 0. So in about 8 years, I could end up with 48,000 shares at, even assuming they're dropping, even if they're $2 a share, I'd have $56,000 worth of shares when I started out with $16,000 worth of shares, and I'll be collecting a dividend. There's no downside to something like this. Unless they go bankrupt, I'm just going to keep rolling and selling calls and buying and selling puts and getting more shares and rolling and selling more shares. If you assign it to me, I'm not threatened. Now, what blows that plan? That plan would get blown if they stop paying out a nice fat dividend. That would not be good. Or if they look like they're going to go bankrupt, that would not be good. So you watch out for that stuff. You don't just hold on to them regardless. But if these guys survive, and they have survived through the last couple of financial crises, they managed to get through it. If they, as long as they survive, and don't forget they survived through massive, rapid rate increases by the Fed, that got us to the position we're in now, where everybody's screaming they need to lower rates. They went from 0 to 5%, and AG&C was fine. They made it through that time. So when you start this low, that's why I jumped on it for the top trades. It's because when you're starting down at $8, you can quickly work off the entire cost of the spread between the dividends that are coming in, $1.44 of dividends every I'm sorry, it's $1.44 per year. So in 2 years, it's $2.88. We missed one payment, it'll be a bit less, but it's $2.88 off of $8.25. So 25% of this money comes back as dividends, and another 25% of this money comes back here. So you're dropping your you're dropping your cost 50% pretty much. Why would I not want to do that? There's logic to this. We're not just randomly picking numbers. Now, that would go into our income portfolio, of course, because that's where we like to have those kind of stocks. Then we've got PHM, the home builders. Tuesday, 27. Okay, so PHM, the home builders, and we felt they'd have good earnings, and they did. Here we got, which portfolio is this for? Long-term portfolio. So in our long-term portfolio, we sold 10 puts at 75. The $75 puts are way down here. We sold them for 8, so our net cost is 75 minus 8 is 67, way down here. And there's support down here. You see support? Look at that support line over here. So there's support at 70. We're netting in for 67. So that's like free money. So we sold these puts, promising to buy PHM if it gets that cheap. Then we buy a bull call spread, and the net of the bull call spread is $10. We buy 20 of those, so that's $20,000. Less the 8,000 credit here is net 12,000 on the $50,000 spread. And that's how we're starting. That's our initial plan. Long-term portfolio, we could easily spend $100,000. We don't care, and we're only spending 12. So, you know, if it gets cheaper, if it goes lower, we're happy to add more to the spread. But at the moment, we're pretty comfortable with this. And we're at the $75 calls. So we're here, we're in the money, and we sold the $90 calls. That's not even where we are now. We're already in the money on this spread. We're 100% in the money on this. This spread is $50,000 in the money, and we're buying it for $12,000. That's why it's the top trade alert. How stupid is that? We are, again, we have the 90, oh, I'm sorry, it's the 91.15. I apologize. Why did I think it was, oh, I see, I was looking at 75.90. My bad. We bought the 91.15 spread, 91.15, so we're not all that in the money. It's a 91.15 spread. We're in the money, but only slightly. And we sold the $75 put. So we really don't think the $75 puts are going to be a problem. That should be very strong support there. And we do think that we're going to get back to 115 within 2 years on this. And what's PHM today? Might be back there already. 101. I mean, you gotta love this stuff. It was just stupid. They had earnings. Look at the earnings. Oh, 5% beat on the EPS and a 2% beat on the revenues. And not only that though, but I heard the CEO on TV. He was crowing. He was so happy with his quarter and his guidance and everything else. He was just so proud of himself. Jack in the Box, again, being treated like they're going bankrupt. They sell burgers. They sell cheap burgers. And again, McDonald's, right? Do they survive? Do they get through the bad economic times? Do they just move and prosper? They do. Jack in the Box's biggest problem that's been taking them down is they've been investing in expansion at the same time as the economy started bucking and everybody's freaking out. But the reality of Jack in the Box, and we did a quick report on them, because unlike the other two, they aren't 100% obvious. But the revenue's down a tiny bit, okay, driven by Del Taco's big decline, which is due to refranchising. There's a reason they are down. It's because of what they're doing with the operations. Their earnings is great. Their same-store sales are up slightly. Del Taco problem because of the refranchising. Same-store sales, again, Del Taco. If the store is being remodeled, it's kind of hard to sell the same amount. Margins improved to 23%, which is lower food costs are offsetting labor inflation, strategic shifts. 93% of their locations are franchises. So they make their money as it's like McDonald's. They make their money as a franchise, not as an operator. 1,000 restaurants are being updated with kiosks and stuff. They're spending the money. They're investing. Labor costs, minimum wage law, blah, blah, blah. Inflation. They borrowed a lot of money, but that's fine if they're borrowing it for good reason. There wasn't any significant impact basically from the fires in the LA and so on and so forth. It's 24/7 stupidly cheap, and Bodie runs his cash flow analysis model and so on and so forth. PE ratios 12.7 versus an industry average of 20. Okay, EBITDA 8.9 versus an industry average of 10. Technical so blah blah blah. I don't care about that. So franchise model stabilizes cash flows. Del Taco's continued performance, digital adaptation. So all good stuff. Upcoming catalysts. Watch for the earnings call on April 25th. Focus on the same store. This is, I mean, the analysis from Bodie is fantastic, right? So rate cuts could boost consumer spending. If we have rate cuts, rate hikes may pressure debt refinancing from them. The OPEC oil supply, because that's where you are with a Jack in the Box. It's like, you know, whether or not the person driving around has an extra $5 is going to determine whether they stop at Jack in the Box or not. So when you're at the pump, you know, that it matters so much for this kind of food. When you're at the pump and you're either paying $40 to fill up your tank or $60 to fill up your tank, that is a decision of whether you're going to go out to eat 5 minutes later or not. Jack is undervalued, trading the steep value, 35 to 60% upside, while headwinds persist. Strategic franchising, market expansion provide a path to recovery, blah, blah, blah. So stupidly cheap. And with Jack in the Box, it's the same kind of thing. We sold the puts, right? We sold the $25 puts with them at 25, aggressively selling puts more because I think this is a ridiculous price where they're at now. And then we bought 40 longs, and it's $13,600 on the $40,000 spread. But here, oh, this one was the one. That's why I was saying the other one. This one, we have a 15-25 spread. So this is 100% in the money. This spread is $40,000 in the money at 13.6, and this is only for December. So we only have to wait until December. We make 194% if they hold 25. This is how we bargain hunt. This is how we look for stocks. And there's so many opportunities. And all we do is we go through our watch list, we look at stocks we like, and we say, who is on sale? Who is at a rock bottom that we're willing to put our cards on the table? We are buying a spread that is $40,000 in the money for $13,600. And by December, 6 months from now, no, 8 months from now, sorry, 8 months from now, 194% upside potential, and all they have to do is not fall below 25. So don't say I never gave you nothing. Have yourselves a good week. We'll do this again next week, and we'll see what kind of crazy stuff happens then. All right, take care, everybody.